All right, we'll get started. We'll hope that anyone who filters in later will catch up with us. Welcome everybody to the March Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast Advisory Meeting. You as our attendees are our advisory group, and we thank you for being here. If you could drop your name and the organization you work for in the chat, as well as your role at that organization. We do use that information to keep track of who's attending meetings. If you are interested, please also drop your email address in there if you want to connect with folks after the meeting, in case there's any follow-up items that would benefit your organization or your area. It also may help if you identify what area you cover in the Tri-County region, so that folks know, if you are in their realm or if you are someone who might be able to refer them to somebody else at your organization. Can we do a quick round of introductions from the BCPC? I'm Shelby Arthur, Tri-County lead, and I also am the liaison for the County of Santa Barbara. Michael?
Hi, everybody. Michael Foote, San Luis Obispo County liaison and with Reach.
Thank you. Tim?
Hi, my name is Tim Tierney, doing GIS and map support for Broadband Consortium.
Thank you. Nadine?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nadine, and I'm doing communication support for the consortium.
And we have two special guests today from Teleworks, who are here to hear any last minute input on the VRBI project that's been happening in Ventura over the last year and a half at this point. John, would you like to introduce yourself first?
So I'm John. I'm pleased to be here and see a few to several familiar faces. So good to see everyone. I'm CEO at Teleworks, and as Shelby mentioned, just finished up more or less the project, the VRBI project, that culminated in our presentation, our discussion in Camarillo 2 weeks ago. Was it, Shelby? Yeah. So good to be here.
Thank you. And Emmanuel, would you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm also with Teleworks, lead network engineer for Teleworks, and have been involved in all the projects that we have executed for the Central Coast, particularly this and Ventura. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Thank you for being here. Quick agenda update. I'm going to run through very quickly the Broadband for All updates so that we can get into the VRBI discussion prior to the time that John and Emmanuel have to jump off our call. And then we'll run back into a roundtable discussion. Any updates, any comments you have or questions about our Broadband for All updates, let's just save those for after the VRBI discussion, just for the interest of time, because our guests only have a bit more time. Yeah. So quick, exciting update from the Broadband Consortium is that we did hear just this morning that the CASIF infrastructure grant timeline was announced for 2025. It's looking like July. They're planning to publish the broadband availability map and open the application shortly thereafter, the application period for the CASIF infrastructure grant. The deadline will be October 31st, after the BEAD applications have been settled and the project areas have been defined. The idea is to align CASIF infrastructure funds with remaining locations that can be covered by that grant after the BEAD projects are already settled. So they just announced this timeline this morning. As you know, or may not know, generally the CASIF infrastructure grant deadline is in April. So they have published their extension, and this is the new deadline or timeline. We will go into this deeper in a future meeting when we have more information. The CPUC is having their annual meeting in April, and we expect to hear more information about how their CASIF infrastructure grant process will go this year. Last mile federal funding account, round 2 was announced. After we've been saying round two, it actually will only apply to the 6 counties that have not had any awards from the FFA account or the last mile federal funding account. So no more awards for the counties that have already received at least one award. And it looks like additional awards will require the funds to be put into the governor's budget in a future budget year. We can discuss the prospects for that in later on in the call. Just as a point of, it's incredibly disappointing. I have a lot to say about it, but we'll wait. For the sake of transparency, I did want to put up our calculations of how much funding is remaining in each county that was not awarded in this, what they're calling round 1, and that will not be available in round 2 because our counties are not eligible to apply in round 2. So we'll talk about advocacy efforts that you might be interested in pursuing after we get to that part of the discussion, our roundtable discussion. Oh, and I guess I took out my BEAD slide. We can add this in later, but the BEAD application is a 2-parter. So you'll need to, if you are planning to apply for BEAD funds, we strongly recommend you reach out to the BEAD support team, the broadband caseworkers at CPUC. If you can't reach the BEAD support team, you will need to go through a pre-qualification application to ensure that you're an eligible applicant, that you have the funding resources to supplement or match, and that you're ready to submit an application. And then the project application window will be available to you. Those deadlines have changed slightly, and I'll look those up while we're in the next part of our presentation. So again, lots to talk about here in our roundtable discussion, but I do want to honor the time of our Teleworks colleagues and just run through the VRBI project. That stands for the Ventura Regional Broadband Initiative. We, in partnership with Teleworks, provided a briefing to Ventura County stakeholders on February 27th. I pulled a couple slides just to review, so those of you who weren't able to attend that presentation can get the idea of how this VRBI document is set up and the information that we are really trying to execute on. We're inviting feedback only through March 24th. So we've been sending it out to the working group members, the representatives on VCOG. We've sent it out through BCPC, stakeholder networks. If you are somebody who is in Ventura County and you're interested in asking any questions or making comments on the content of the VRBI, now's your kind of last chance. And we will be putting it in print digitally after March 24th. We probably won't be adding any changes. So just a quick review, and John, Emmanuel, feel free to jump in at any point. I'm sure people like to hear other voices besides just mine.
You know, hey, let me take that opportunity. I don't know what slides you have lurking behind your screen, but let me just say that I'll do my best to characterize in 2 or 3 minutes what Shelby and Malika had asked us to do. We got involved in, say, November timeframe, and we had 3 areas of focus to give the overarching product an engineering focus. And our emphasis, and this ties into the slide that Shelby has on the screen, was a broadband landscape analysis. So, you know, what does Ventura County look like today? Then we went on and we did a broadband we looked at broadband opportunity zones. And then finally we said, hey, you know, here we are in 2025. What do we think is Ventura County is going to look like by 2030 based on a couple of forces and dynamics that are either in play or will be set in play. So that was the nature of our scope, or the extent of our scope, the breadth of our scope. And the broadband analysis, the landscape analysis, which was number one, we looked at service availability, which is really with respect to broadband serviceable locations, FCC speed standards, NTI standards, which is 100 downlink, 20 uplink. Unserved and underserved. We looked at the competitive environment, which ties to the slide that Shelby has, to see, who's out there. Is there room to play, or is it a lightly competitive market, or is it a intensely competitive market? And then we certainly looked at the middle mile baseline. Main takeaway from number one, which is our landscape analysis, is Ventura is well served. They're at 98%. And having said that, and that's higher than work that we've done work in SLO County, we've done work in Santa Barbara County. It's higher than the other, and Monterey County as well. It's higher than the other counties. Oddly enough, or interestingly enough, it's a lighter competitive market. So you actually have fewer areas in Ventura that have a cable provider and a fiber provider. So that's surprising that there's more fiber in Santa Barbara, northern Santa Barbara County. Let me preface that. That was what we looked at, as well as SLO County. And then the other point is Ventura is well served by middle mile. With the notable exception of everyone's favorite town, Ojai, is got their challenges. So that was number one. Then we rolled, armed with kind of a good solid baseline. Where are the opportunities? So we use clustering algorithms to look for and identify sustainable areas, or we translate them into polygons that are suitable. Sustainable is, meets an ISP, profitability, net present value, internal rate of return metrics. And we generate these clustering algorithms based on density, as well as the competitive status. So if it's not a lot of fiber around there and it's sufficient density, in the case of Ventura, it's 800 locations per square mile. Then there's a good likelihood that there is either an incumbent ISP or a very facile, aggressive new entrant that will come on in and take a look at it, because there's gold in them bar hills. So that's the essence of our broadband opportunity zones. We also looked for lighter density areas, sustainability in fixed wireless access. The main takeaway is that in the fiber arena, we came up with 26 discrete fiber opportunity zones that represent in the order of 125,000 locations. That's a lot. So just keep that in mind as we touch on number three, our third area of focus, which was the emergent network, 2030 network. The fixed wireless access is far more challenging. This is the prototypical smaller ISP, not the MNO fixed wireless access that you find in dense urban areas. And there were 17 fixed wireless access opportunity zones that tally to about 2,000 locations. So that was a big chunk of what our scope was. And then we took that and said, okay, what are we gonna look like in 2030? So when we look at that, we considered a business as usual. We've got a good mix of incumbent ISPs that are continuing to press forward and expand their networks, extend their networks. We got BEAD activities ongoing and that are actually getting started. CASIF, FFA, maybe. Jeff might say maybe not. And we have municipal involvement. That a lot of municipalities have done really good work in Ventura. Brian is on the call. He's done a lot. He's a good example of Moore Park and Bryan are good examples of municipalities that are anxious and energized to get more fiber in their communities. So, and I think that's going to spread. We see that in Simi as well. So we came up with a ranking system that is pretty simple, reasonably straightforward, that you achieve gold standard if in your municipality, in your city, if you have a choice of 3. Generally, a choice of 3 means 2 wireline and a fixed wireless access. So this would be an MNO, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, that's marketing, that's selling their 5G home in the case of Verizon, as an example. And that's there as a byproduct of their C-band deployment. So that's you're going to see that just about everywhere, certainly in tier 1 cities and also tier 2, tier 3 cities, but not assured, not guaranteed. Long story short, that's the definition of a gold standard city. You're silver if you have a choice of 2. So the metric is mainly about choice. And then you're a bronze, you fit into the bronze category if you have a choice of 1 ISP. The current situation is that across Ventura County, there's 10 municipalities, incorporated cities. There are 5 that have a silver status, and there are 5 that have bronze. Now, we did the analysis and where are we going to be, and really the most important point is where will we be by 2030, and we feel pretty strongly that with the continuation of business as usual, the assistance from federal and state and local grants, and active communities, such as Moore Park, that the 5 silver and 5 bronzes can flip to gold standard by 2030. That gives us, we got a good period of time, and tie that into the 125,000 locations roughly. If we get there, or could even go beyond that, but if we get into that proximity, that's going to drive improvement in the consumer choice. And then separately, you're going to have the continued deployment of carrier, let's say MNO, mobile network operator, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, fixed wireless access, which is giving you, in the case of Verizon, is giving you 300 on the downlink. So it's real broadband capability, and the middle mile is pretty good. The big challenge that Ventura has is figuring out a way to get up through to Ojai along highways 150, 126, and 33. So that's going to be the bigger challenge. And then I should also say that the communities, and this is real. Now we're really into the outside of the incorporated cities, is finding a way to get the smaller areas that fall into our fixed wireless access opportunity zones. That is a struggle. That is a challenge. That's going to remain a challenge, and it's going to take a lot of effort from the county at the county level, to see to it that they're well addressed. There's something in it for everyone, and satellite is improving, and it'll give you access, but it's not deemed by the FCC today. Let me emphasize today, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. As broadband. So if you're on satellite today, you're considered a broadband serviceable location, eligible for BEAD financing. Okay, that's kind of it. Went a little bit more than 2 or 3 minutes, but that was the nature of our scope. There is an extended deck that Shelby has that's being brushed up and finalized along with the document. And that's happy to address any thoughts, questions, or comments before and turn it back to Shelby.
Thank you, John. And I apologize for the switch. My
No worries.
PowerPoint wasn't loading. But thank you for actually going into such detail of the work that was done for this VRBI project. We used the work that Teleworks put in and have been developing some strategies, strategic priorities, and action steps in partnership with Teleworks for municipalities to take action to actually move the needle here. And they've given some great recommendations that are all in the document. We will be sending out the PDF of the slides again, of the full deck, of the report, of the strategies and priorities section as a pullout. So we will follow up with that information again tomorrow and invite your feedback. Anyone have anything they wanted to discuss right now with the group?
I wanted from the Moore Park side to compliment John and Emmanuel's work. I was there last month for the presentation on that was phenomenal. And I will say your analysis from the Moore Park side was perfect. And I'm a little closer now, but I expect to be taking an item to our city council to authorize a new ISP into our streets in Moore Park that will take care of 2 of your 23 fiber opportunity zones in the county, both the
Right.
ones inside Moore Park city limits. And we will not quite get to gold, but we will get from bronze to silver with
Right.
that. And that'll be April 2nd. I have one more domino to fall to make sure that's happening actually on the 2nd, but I expect that to happen later today.
Awesome. And good luck with that, Brian.
Yeah,
It's a
thank
big
you.
step.
And
Yeah,
thank you to both of you and your team.
thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts on the VRBI process?
Pretty good.
All right. I think we have, beat that drum consistently. And I appreciate your time, John and Emmanuel,
It's
and all of the inputs you
been
have.
a lot
If
of fun
anyone would
working.
like-
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
working.
it's been great. It's been a great collaboration. I think, did you both put your email addresses in? If anyone wants to reach out directly to Teleworks regarding their municipalities section of the VRBI, that would be, you're welcome to do so.
Let's do that right now.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions before we move on? Get to the next part of our. Oops. Having a hard time with the slide deck today. Oh, and then it won't let me run back. All right, sorry. This is all being recorded for posterity to see my technical expertise. All right, well, we will just go ahead and have a great conversation aside from that. If there's no more updates or questions about the VRBI, we can move into roundtable updates or open discussion about the announcements regarding CASIP infrastructure funding and FFA funding. Should we start with SLO County? Do you have any updates that anyone would like to share about projects and deployment and any funding applications or funded projects?
Go for it, Jeff.
No new grants or anything like that, but we're moving forward on our grant in Paso Robles Testero, and we're moving forward with, I see there's nobody from City of SLO on today. We're working with our partnership with City of SLO, which is very interesting because, we have luckily a very good working relationship, and we work together on a lot of things. And it's interesting because cities don't really know how to build fiber. And so it's very interesting as we have to take kind of baby steps as we go forward, and they have to ask a lot of questions, and we have to ask, well, what do you mean by that? And, to try to figure out how this all fits together. Certain examples, like one of the questions that came up this week is, in the grant, there's certain allocations of funding for drops, which in most cases are aerial drops. In some cases, they could be underground. But we know in real life that once a network is built, many customers don't connect to it for many months or years. You know, it takes them a while to switch off of something else. So how do you deal with funding in a grant that has a specific time period that may not actually get used for several years until that person in that house decides to be connected? And so we're trying to figure that stuff out, work with the Public Utilities Commission on that, but it's pretty interesting trying to work our way through all of this. The other thing that's happening is, we're seeing some positive signs from the cities as they're looking at microtrenching standards. Because the whole point of microtrenching is that it needs to be less expensive than directional boring or open trenching. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it in the first place. And some of the standards that come out involve so much repaving that it just makes no sense to use it at all. So we're seeing some positive signs. We're working with Paso Robles on that to see if they're open to microtrenching, since a lot of that city is underground. We're talking to City of Slow, and nothing's been finalized yet, but there are positive indications that they may be developing standards that would be workable. And if they do that, then other cities might follow suit, and that could help with cities that have a lot of underground.
If I could pick your brain on that, Jeff, because the actual domino I'm waiting for is a final engineering consensus here, specifically on the microtrenching standards that'll go throughout. So the issue seems to be whether or not we're going to require a TCAP
Yes.
versus just allowing basically seal the heck out of that, which, to me is a pure engineering thing that on the policy side, I'm not going to weigh in on.
Right.
But I've got plenty of
That-
examples of cities and counties that want the TCAP. And then I've got plenty of samples of cities that don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, and that nails it right on the head. And the other factor is some of the cities require like a 2-foot TCAP.
Yeah.
And that requires 2 passes, apparently, of most types of equipment that does the grinding. So 2 passes, if it required 1 pass, that's still more expensive than I think a lot of providers would like to have to pay for. But if it's 2 passes, you're basically out to lunch at that point.
Just if I can comment just real quickly on this, because we
Yeah.
spent a lot of time working with Jeff on this. It's if you're a city of Los Angeles or San Francisco, you've got like ultra high density, and you're more apt to see TCAPs or cap and grind and cap in these kinds of highly density areas because the economics continue to work well. When you're in smaller cities, you don't have quite the density, and the economics shift because of that. I mean, this fiber FTTH is a density-driven business, and it's in those cities that everybody always say, and we all believe it. You got to be fiber friendly if you want a fiber provider to come into your city. You got to be fiber friendly. Well, one way to be fiber friendly is to support microtrenching in a way that is responsible for the municipalities, but also enabling for the ISP. And there's a delicate balance there. But a lot of these examples where you see intensive TCAPs or they're big cities where it's like you can pave the city in gold, and there's still enough to make the ISP business model because these super high densities.
That's a phenomenal insight, John. I did not put 2 and 2 together for that, but I don't have, we went through, a quarter mile and you hit 400 customers in these apartment complexes. I don't have that generally in Moore Park.
You don't. No, you don't. And it sometimes, and not always, but sometimes it comes down to the municipality that says, hey, how badly do we want you know, how important it is to give our citizen more choice. And it's a win-win negotiation. I think it's fair to say that no ISP wants to throw in crap that's going to create problems. They shouldn't. It's happened. There are some situations out there, but generally that's to be avoided by both parties, and both parties want to avoid that. Partners, and you know, if you want to have a partnership.
Great.
Okay.
I appreciate you all bringing this up. I was just talking with Fred Luna at SBCAG about the Sandag SCAG Reddit permitting study that was released this last year. And I don't know, Nadine, if you have that handy, if you want to throw it up in the chat, but microtrenching is not, they couldn't even make a recommendation around it because it's so hotly contested on about like they couldn't standardize, right, a recommendation because municipalities have such different takes on it. And so it's great to hear that comparison between sort of the large city high density take versus some of our municipalities that are really not.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up, Jeff, and pose it generally to the group. I'm just throwing up the bead challenge map that's been finalized. So theoretically, these are the bead locations, right? And the green dots are predominantly the FFA projects, unless there's an infrastructure grant project that's also funded in the area. And I know people might not necessarily be talking about BEAD applications yet, because there's still the pre-qualification and the project development phase. But just as a general point of interest, there are still a lot of locations around the currently approved FFA applications that would benefit from expansion of service. And I don't, my question is, you know, what is the business take on the viability of applying for both grants, considering you have to have match requirements, you have to have what you're saying, the length of time that it takes to actually identify your customers and have them subscribe, compared to the length of time that the grant needs to be executed in. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, we haven't really made any progress on BEAD in the SLO County area yet. We have folks at Astound doing that. They're kind of looking at stuff in Oregon right now. And I've been asking that question myself, but at this point, I don't have anything to report. I think the other factor is there seems to be somewhat of a cloud hanging over BEAD. You know, is it even going to be there? And
Right.
do you want to go do a bunch of work if they're just going to take it away? So there's that concern too.
Yeah. I understand that. I hear that loud and clear. And I think from my perspective, given that FFA was so limited in Santa Barbara County and Ventura County, and those awards were so limited, I'm concerned that businesses are hesitant to apply for BEAD for that very reason, because they don't want to put the upfront work into something that seems to be under, you know, under review, to say it nicely. I'm concerned then that, you know, people won't apply for those BEAD funds, and then the government will look at it and say, oh, I guess they don't need them, right? We don't have to continue providing subsidies in this area, and we'll be left with a 2030 network that looks really strikingly similar to the 2020 network, right? Okay. Any other updates from SLO County? I don't know that we have anyone else on the call who's working separately. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add in? No. Thanks. Santa Barbara County. I know we have David on the call, Cheyenne's here. Alma, any updates from Santa Barbara County?
We have excitement.
Let's hear it.
We are, I think it's a centimeter at this point away of placing our first PO with HP Communications, put the fiber in at our Camp 4 site. So that's the one where we already have the hard conduit in the ground, and we've finalized our network architecture at last. There was a last minute tweak so I could get redundancy. And then so they'll be putting the Duraline into the hard conduit and then fiber into the Duraline and getting Camp 4 up and at least having all the fiber done, all the splicing done, all the drops in place for the houses that aren't there yet, because they're not there yet. It's a new development. We have our MSA, the Master Service Agreement with KGP Co. that won the bidding for the active network equipment, and we're just exchanging red lines at this point. We already have the equipment list, so as soon as we settle that, then we're placing that order. And then finally, the reservation construction will be the next one. HPCom won that as well, so we have the same contractor for both sides. The only thing hanging out there is our buddies with Middle Mile, and I cringe because it's been so long. We don't know what our cost share of that is and if we allocated enough in the grant. So that's making me a little bit nervous, but that's where we are. So we're actually going to have fiber in the ground by the end of April over at Camp
Exciting.
4 and starting to dig on the reservation by the end of April.
And do you have a reliable contact at the MMBI project
Oh, yeah.
team that you can get information from? Great. Okay.
We meet every Monday at 4 o'clock, and we've been doing that for a
Okay.
year.
Great.
So they're just
Excellent.
finalizing their contract with CBIN. The contractor is going to do the digging for them, and we have a share agreement in place with them. There's going to be 3 tubes in the ground on part of Highway 154, also known as the Chumash Highway, and Route 246 over to our reservation where the casino and our data center is. So if I only knew.
And just to clarify for those on the call who don't know the route, it's actually the part of the 154 from the 101 at Los Olivos south to the roundabout over to the 246. So it's not, the state middle mile is not coming up or going further south on the 154. East?
Correct. It's sort of southeastish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there won't be a 100 gigabit pipe running down 154 into Santa Barbara itself. So
Yeah.
it's going the other side down the 101 and following the rail line.
Which will take, there is not a complete loop. It's not going from the reservation over to Buellton anymore as originally planned. So it's not completing a loop there, but I know several people I talk to in Santa Barbara County are like, we should get it over the 154. And I just want to clarify that this segment that's on the 154 is not going all the way down. So it's not creating a big loop.
Right, and we're pushing along with Comcast and Frontier to see if we can partner with them to get over to Buellton.
Cool.
From where we are. So
Yeah.
There's a lot of balls in the air, but 3 of them are going to hit the ground in the right place. Is that the right
Excellent.
analogy?
Great. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Great to hear the update. Molly, I saw you unmute. Did you have a question?
I do. You mentioned running that possible, well, not running a possible cable over to the 154 going east-south-ish to Santa Barbara, and wondering, are there any plans for a connectivity in that direction?
Well, from Middle Mile, no, because they're going to terminate on the reservation. So the spur ends there. Comcast has done something up 154, but I don't know how big that pipe is, but I do know that we're on it. because we still had service when the other side of the valley burned up in October.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and we lost the 6,400 feet of fiber and copper and
Mhm.
cable. So that pretty much shut down the valley, and we were the only thing operating
Right.
for
And
the
I'm-
World Series.
That's right.
So-
It was during the World
Uh,
Series.
Yeah, it was
I'm
the
just
first
pulling
night
up
of the
this
World
map
Series.
for you, Molly, to see that this is the BEAD funding. The green dots have been funded by other sources. So in some cases, like these green dots southwest of San Ynez are part of this FFA project on the res.
Yep.
These green dots to the east of the 154 are largely funded by RDOF, Rural Development something funds.
Yeah.
And those are awarded to Frontier. So Frontier has been funded to build out at some point to these green dots. The
And
red
I don't
dot,
think that, and by the way, I dispute that
Yeah.
map with all the RDOF because they haven't lifted a finger. There is a plan, and we have been
There's a
in
plan.
communication with Frontier, but they don't have a date. So I don't think it's fair to put those dots green
Correct. I agree
and
with
assuming
you.
there's going to be broadband to the RDOF locations from a company that is in financial issues, and there's all that deal with Verizon and everything else going on with them. So I
Right.
dispute
And
that.
what I do know about RDOF is that Frontier, all RDOF auction winners were required to build 20% of their projects by the end of 2024. And what that means is 20% of their entire auction award, right? Not 20% of each county, not 20% of each area. So I believe they got to about 17% in Santa Barbara County in terms of reaching the 20% benchmark in our county. And I do not know if there's a timeline for the rest of it. I think RDOF is requiring a timeline, but it's, they have a really long outlook for that. The reason I wanted to share this map with anyone on the call who has a similar question to Molly is that there are a lot of eligible locations for funding along the 154 that the pink dots say they do not receive service at 25 megabits per second download speeds. The blue dots mean that they are receiving somewhere between 25 and 100 megabits per second download speeds. And so that's, there are eligible routes along the 154, but what I've heard in conversation with just about any ISP that I've talked to about that route, which is a priority for the county of Santa Barbara, is that the numbers don't pencil out yet in terms of expanding the infrastructure that's currently there in a fire-prone area that isn't as dense as, for example, up here in the valley. Believe it or not, we're dense, and that there's not a current plan for that Southeast 154.
Well, and Shelby, the reason I ask, because it sounds like the rural areas seem to be, because they don't have the density, it doesn't become a priority. My concern as a trustee for school district is that we have families that live in those areas and off Painted Cape. And so those numbers are going to be even less. So how do we connect our families and our students to have that accessibility? So I'll probably set a meeting with you, Shelby, so that I can understand more about how that might work for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And John Harden, who was on the call earlier, says it really well, where he says, there is something for everyone. It's just a matter of like what technology works for each location and what's the scale that's required to implement that technology there.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, in my experience, like I have a friend who lives up in that area. They all have wireless service.
Mm-hmm.
Even before Starlink, there's locally based, wireless providers who, that's what I have at my house. And I'll probably never have fiber at my house, unfortunately.
And the outset of a lot of these grant programs said we want to connect every house in rural America to fiber, right? And that's a great dream. That's aspirational. It's not realistic necessarily in the amount that it costs to build fiber connections to every single rural household. But that doesn't mean that those folks don't need the connection. So we have to look at the scope of technologies that can be used to formulate the best solution for each area.
It's, if you drive around rural areas and you look at all the money that got spent and continues to be spent to provide electricity, you'll have one house that has 20 poles just to serve that one house.
I thought you were going to say miles.
Yeah. Well, no, but it could
too.
even be more than
Yeah.
that. But just in where I live, my neighbors have, like, I don't even have electricity. I wasn't around. Our place never got served, but when they were spending money to put in electrical infrastructure, a lot of money got spent. And that's kind of how I look at the fiber thing. Is it's, even though it is expensive, over time, it depends as long as we don't lose our commitment, I think it could get done, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and good point, Jeff, that the fiber to the home is not looked at the same way politically as power to the
Right.
home.
Yeah.
And, now with Starlink getting a little more visibility at the federal level, and I'm understating that carefully, it's okay, but it's not really a great solid solution to grow. There's going to be bandwidth limitations, and they won't be able to do 5 and 10 gigabit to the home in 10, 15, 20 years. So
And that's really the big problem, is people have very short memories as to how much the growth of bandwidth consumption has gone on since, the 90s and the internet first hit. We used our first ISP, we had a single T1 circuit to serve all of San Luis Obispo. And then you get to the point where you're putting T1 circuits into people's businesses, and then sometimes into homes. And then you get to the point where you have to turn them all off because they're so slow, nobody can even use them. And I think people are having short memories when they're thinking of, wireless service is going to be the ultimate, provider to homes and businesses in rural areas. It just won't be able to handle it.
I am glad you said it like that. There was this article that came out, and I wish I could find it off the top of my desktop right now, around the increase in data center usage from I think it was 2015 to 2020 to today. And it is astounding how much more data is required by data centers to be able to serve all these areas. And if you think about the way that technology is moving, you've got people who want to run their smart refrigerator, their smart washer, their Alexa, and use the internet in 5 different rooms. The capacity for your basic residence is continuing to increase in ways that people don't necessarily think of as well. So fiber continues to be the best technology for the higher capacity, higher speed. And there are other technologies that might work in the meantime until there's a stronger connection. Brooke, I saw that you posted in the chat that you started the Kuyama Broadband Working Group. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Swartfager. I work at Blue Sky out in Kuyama, California, which is the Valley, SLO County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, and Kern County. And March 4th, I facilitated our first broadband working group. we had 5 people there, which is great numbers for Kuyama. And we just it was an introduction meeting, kind of hear what people are interested in. Talking, like, not a lot of people knew about Middle Mile. I showed them the bead map. We talked about just like rural strategies for getting broadband. And so we're actually having our second meeting April 1st. And it's just exciting that we had people come together and, try to think about proactive and realistic solutions for Koyama, because we are really rural, and it'd be great to get fiber out here. I know we're on the map for MMBI, but still just, it's once we have that, still getting it connected to the houses, and we have a lot of ranches and stuff like that. So it's just exciting. And yeah, if anyone has more questions, I put my email in the chat. And yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Sure, congratulations for that work and having a good group come together. My understanding is CVIN is all the same provider that David's working with is also contracted for that Route 166 Middle Mile. My concern is that it's slated for completion in the end of 2026, which is like the very end of the Middle Mile builds, which is really frustrating for the Kuyama Valley because there's been a lot of starts and stops in that area.
Yeah. And to my understanding, if it doesn't get built, then that by 2026, then the funding just goes elsewhere, right? Or kind of, is that how it?
I think it evaporates. Yeah, I think
It
it has to be
evaporates.
spent. Yeah. So the more advocacy we can do out for that leg, the better. Yeah.
Definitely.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, I'm not sure who is your congressional representative up in Kuyama, but it's probably worth reaching out to them and letting him or her know that there's a significant, concern in the community that would affect a lot of things if that funding doesn't come through, and see what they can do in DC for you.
Yeah, they just came out last month, and we had a community lunch meeting. And they're it's Roy Lee, I believe, and then Daisy, and they're being very proactive and supportive of Koyama. So
You don't mind me asking, is there an R or a D after your congressional representative's name?
I can send it to you in the chat just so that I can confirm.
Okay.
I believe it's Salud
ahead, Michael.
Carvajal's district still, yeah.
Yeah.
So a D, yeah. So he's definitely, yeah.
And maybe Brooke, just if you would like to set up that call and have us join, we're happy to join as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Salud Carvajal's office has been pretty proactive in broadband conversation and advocating for the region. I think they really love it when they have specific stories to be able to share. And Kuyama is a great specific story also. Roy Lee is the county supervisor who was recently elected and is getting a handle on his district, I think, right?
Yeah, and actually I was with Salud at a meeting last week, and he was specifically asking communities for specific projects that he can use for his advocacy. So, yeah.
And then even at the state level, I think it's worth connecting with Greg Hart, I think is one of our representatives as well for the Kuyama advocacy there. Well, great. I wanted to give Cheyenne or Alma, we're such a small group today, so we can really call on people directly. If you have anything you wanted to share before we move to Ventura County. Okay. I will share. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Shelby. I had one other thing on Steven and the middle mile guys, we've
Mhm.
identified that as a risk because they've been on board for over 6 months, but less than a year. Steven has been known as the contractor that's going to do the work, and the planning effort has just gobbled up all this time and now squished them down to about 18 months to complete 3,800 miles of MMBI. And I'm going to be astounded. Just, rough numbers of people, a small battalion
Mhm.
is what it's going to take to mobilize to be able to do it all over the state. So I I think it's risky. They say they can pull it off. I don't know what impact that's going to have on everybody else trying to get fiber in the ground. That's why we pushed really hard to get our contractor locked in now. But it's an astounding when you look at it, and no pun there, Jeff. It's just big.
Mhm.
The challenge that they have in front of them to get it done in 26.
Yeah,
And
we're
yeah, go ahead.
enthusiastic about it being there, but I have to admit, David, we're the same way. We're kind of like,
How?
it looks like it will be very difficult for them to meet their timeframes, and how's that going to impact anybody trying to use it? And we don't know what it'll cost.
And that particular route has changed assignments multiple times.
Yeah.
So it is certainly, I think risky is a good word for it. It seems to me like a pretty vital loop though, right? Closing a pretty vital loop that would connect the coastal access and the internal leg of in California between Kern County and the coastal route there. So it seems like a pretty vital loop to close. So we'll have to see. All right, let's move into Ventura County. Anything that anyone wanted to update from Ventura County? I know we heard from you, Brian, but if you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do have a couple other things. So one, Steve Sawyer, a longtime employee and part of this group for Charter Spectrum, retired last week. So he's been around for decades. I know he did Ventura County. I'm not sure if how far north he extended, but we have not gotten a replacement for him. We just have, the VP of government relations at Spectrum so far. But Shelby, I'll keep you posted if I find out someone is hired for that.
Yeah, let me know.
And then the other thing I just wanted to share, since there's no one here from Ventura County, capital V, capital C, their middle mile project is not yet officially dead. It is still hanging by a thread, and that thread is still getting more and more frayed every day, but they haven't officially received the death certificate, I guess, for it. If our standpoint in Moore Park, we had negotiated with the ISP coming here to give the county access through their new conduit so that it would save the county the effort of actually crisscrossing to get to the other sides of Moore Park for their network. And we're kind of holding that now as a last second thing to yank from the agreement. So, they would hope to know by the end of February and have not yet. So that's that. And I'm not sure if Nicole from Santa Paula had anything else from Ventura County also.
But wouldn't the fact that the FFA folks are saying that they're not going to release anything else for that grant, of that, outstanding 18 million that's there? I guess the way I heard that is, if that's actually true, because we're supposed to be part of that project, that's not going to it may come together some other way, but it's not going to get funded that way.
Correct. And my sense of what's happening, because it's very easy for me to spend someone else's money, is, hey, county, you've got $1 billion budget. You can't find an extra 25 million, somewhere. And I know that's tougher for them. I think it's more of a political calculation that if, someone's going to take that off the to-do list, someone has to vote to do that, which is unpopular, but that the cost of that project is more than my annual city budget. I mean, for reference, so it's not a small amount of money.
And our conversations with the middle mile team, and Jeff, you're probably already aware of this, they speak about it as the project is definitely happening. It's just about who is doing the project. If it's partially funded, if it's the FFA project as proposed, or if they assign it to Caltrans, which again, the risk level of completion changes, I think, when you switch providers of the build. For the middle mile section, not the last mile build out there. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? We are attending the CPUC annual meeting next month. It's a 4-hour meeting. I think it's a public meeting. You're welcome to listen in if you're interested, but you don't have to, because we will attend and report out in our next meeting in April. And if you have any guest speakers or questions or ideas or topics that you'd like us to make sure we address in our next 2 to 3 meetings, please contact me directly, and we'll be happy to loop some information in. I will also state that the last time I said that, people were like, yeah, get somebody from CPUC to talk about BEAD. They will not. They will tell you to go to their office hours. FFA, same thing. Broadband caseworkers, same thing. They are not going to be attending our meeting to talk to everybody at once. So I will throw that out there, that if you need support, I strongly encourage you to reach out to them directly, because they're very interested in meeting one-on-one with stakeholders. And other than that, I guess we'll wrap up and invite you all to join us and to pass along the calendar invitation for next month.
All right. Thanks, Shelby. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.